The eviction notice felt like ice against Sophia Chen's trembling fingers. Bold red letters announced her failure. Final notice, 48 hours to vacate. She sat in the corner of Brew Bean Cafe, surrounded by her life's work. Watercolor paintings leaned against her chair like colorful sentinels. Moreover, each canvas represented hours of hope, dreams painted in vibrant hues that no one wanted to buy. "Another coffee, honey?" The kind waitress refilled Sophia's cup for the third time. "Thank you," Sophia whispered. The cafe was her sanctuary. Furthermore, it was the only warm place she could afford to sit while avoiding her empty apartment. Across the cafe, Damien Cross sat rigid in his tailored suit. His steel blue eyes scanned legal documents with surgical precision. Additionally, his jaw was tight with frustration as he spoke into his phone. "No, Mother. I will not marry Victoria Ashworth just to secure the inheritance. Furthermore, I don't care how much the board loves her connections." Sophia glanced up at the harsh tone. The man looked like he'd stepped from a magazine cover. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and an aura of controlled power. Moreover, everything about him screamed wealth and authority. "I have 6 months to find a wife," Damien continued coldly. "I'll handle it my way." He ended the call and rubbed his temples. Sophia felt a strange pull of sympathy. Even billionaires had problems, apparently. That's when fate intervened. Sophia reached for her coffee and knocked over her water glass. The liquid rushed across her table, soaking her paintings instantly. Moreover, 3 months of work dissolved before her eyes. "No, no, no!" Sophia lunged forward, trying to save the watercolors. But it was too late. The paintings were ruined. Furthermore, they'd been her last hope of making rent money. Sophia burst into tears right there in the crowded cafe. She couldn't stop the sobs that tore from her chest. Moreover, she was homeless, broke, and completely alone. "Excuse me?" A deep voice cut through her crying. Sophia looked up through her tears. The billionaire from across the cafe stood beside her table. Furthermore, his expression was unreadable. "Are you all right?" Damien asked. "Do I look all right?" Sophia laughed bitterly through her tears. "Sorry, that was rude. You were being kind." Damien studied her face with intense focus. "You're an artist." "Was an artist. Now I'm just homeless." Sophia wiped her eyes with a soggy napkin. Something flickered in Damien's expression. He glanced at his phone, then back at her tear-stained face. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Sophia Chen." "Why?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something completely unexpected. Moreover, something that would change both their lives forever. "Sophia Chen," he said carefully. "How would you like to make $50,000? Sophia's mouth fell open. "What?" "I have a proposition for you. Furthermore, it's completely legitimate, though unconventional." "I don't understand." Damien sat down across from her. His presence was overwhelming in the small space. Additionally, his expensive cologne mixed with the cafe's coffee scent. "I need a wife," he said simply. Sophia blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Not a real wife. A contract wife. For 6 months." Damien's voice was businesslike, as if he were negotiating a merger. "Are you insane?" "Probably." Damien's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "My grandfather's will requires me to be married before my 31st birthday. Furthermore, I inherit everything, including control of my company, only if I'm wed." Sophia stared at him. "And you want me to be your fake wife?" "You need money. I need a wife. Moreover, it's a mutually beneficial arrangement." "You don't even know me." "I know enough. You're struggling but proud. Additionally, you're an artist, which means you understand contracts and deadlines. Furthermore, you're clearly not after my money since you had no idea who I was." Sophia's heart pounded. This is crazy. Crazy enough to work. Damien leaned forward. 6 months, Sophia. $50,000 up front, plus housing and expenses. Moreover, all you have to do is play the loving wife at public events. What's the catch? Damien's expression grew serious. The contract would have very specific terms. Furthermore, this would be purely business. No emotional entanglements, no physical intimacy. You mean separate bedrooms, no touching beyond what's necessary for public appearances. Moreover, no romantic complications whatsoever. Sophia looked down at her ruined paintings, then at the eviction notice. Furthermore, she thought about sleeping in her car again tonight. Why me? She asked quietly. Because you're perfect, Damien said simply. You're beautiful enough to be believable as my wife. Moreover, you're clearly not the type to develop unrealistic expectations. The words stung slightly. Sophia wasn't sure if she'd been complimented or insulted. I need time to think, she said. You have 5 minutes. Damien checked his expensive watch. Furthermore, the offer expires when I leave this cafe. Sophia's mind raced. 6 months of financial security. Moreover, 6 months of not worrying about rent or food or basic survival. The contract would protect both of us? She asked. Completely. No emotional attachments, no complications. Furthermore, no sleeping together under any circumstances. Sophia looked into his ice-blue eyes. They were beautiful, but cold. Moreover, she sensed walls built so high that no one could scale them. Perfect. Because she had walls of her own. All right, Sophia said quietly. I'll marry you. Music swells with anticipation and uncertainty. Neither of them realized that some contracts were meant to be broken.
Hello, family and friends. Welcome to another episode of Ever After. Comment where you are listening from, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on our next episode.
Chapter 1. The Deal. The law office felt like a fortress of mahogany and marble. Sophia sat across from 3 lawyers, feeling completely out of place in her simple dress. Moreover, she clutched a cup of coffee like a lifeline while legal jargon flew around her. Article 7, the senior lawyer read, states that both parties will maintain separate living quarters within the primary residence. Furthermore, no physical intimacy beyond necessary public displays shall occur. Damien sat beside her, radiating calm authority. However, Sophia noticed his hands were clasped tightly on the conference table. What exactly qualifies as necessary public displays? Sophia asked. Hand-holding? Brief kisses? Dancing when required? Damien answered without looking at her. Additionally, we may need to share the same bed during overnight business trips. Share a bed? Sophia's voice squeaked. With appropriate barriers, the lawyer clarified. Furthermore, the contract specifies that physical contact must remain minimal and professional. Sophia's cheeks burned. This was the most awkward conversation of her life. Moreover, she was discussing sleeping arrangements with a man she'd known for exactly 48 hours. Article 12 addresses financial arrangements, another lawyer continued. Mrs. Cross will receive $50,000 upon signing. Additionally, she'll have access to a monthly allowance for clothing and personal expenses. Mrs. Cross, Sophia repeated faintly. That's going to take some getting used to. Damien glanced at her then. Having second thoughts? No, Sophia said quickly. I'm just processing. The marriage ceremony will take place Friday, Damien said. Small civil service with minimal witnesses. Furthermore, we'll announce it publicly at the charity gala next week. Friday? Sophia's eyes widened. That's 3 days away. Time is critical. My birthday is in 6 months. Damien's jaw tightened. Furthermore, the board is already questioning my commitment to the company. The lawyers continued reading clauses about public appearances, media interaction, and termination conditions. However, Sophia found herself studying Damien's profile instead of listening. He was undeniably handsome. Strong jawline, intelligent eyes, and an air of confidence that was almost magnetic. Moreover, she wondered what had made him so closed off. Mrs. Chen? The lawyer's voice snapped her back to attention. Do you have any questions about the confidentiality clauses? No. I think it's clear. Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. Excellent. Then we're ready for signatures. Sophia stared at the contract. 20 pages of legal language that would bind her to this stranger for 6 months. Furthermore, it was the most important document she'd ever signed. Sophia. Damien's voice was quiet. You can still walk away. She looked at him with surprise. Are you trying to talk me out of it? I'm giving you one last chance to choose differently. His blue eyes searched her face. Furthermore, this arrangement will change your life completely. My life needs changing, Sophia said firmly. Moreover, I keep my promises. Something flickered in Damien's expression. Approval? Relief? Sophia signed her name with steady hands. Furthermore, she watched Damien do the same, his signature bold and confident. Congratulations, the senior lawyer said. You're now legally contracted for marriage. Furthermore, all terms become effective immediately upon the ceremony. An hour later, Sophia stood in the lobby of Damien's building, craning her neck to see the top. Glass and steel stretched endlessly upward. Moreover, doormen in white gloves treated her with instant deference when they saw her with Damien. The penthouse takes up the entire top floor, Damien explained as they rode the private elevator. Of course it does, Sophia murmured. The elevator opened directly into his apartment. Sophia stepped out and gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the entire city. Additionally, modern furniture and expensive art created a museum-like atmosphere. It's beautiful, she breathed. It's cold, Damien said matter-of-factly. Furthermore, it's never felt like home. Sophia glanced at him with curiosity. Why not? Home requires warmth. This is just space. Damien walked toward the hallway. Let me show you to your room. They passed multiple doors before stopping at the end of the hall. Furthermore, Damien opened the door to reveal a bedroom larger than Sophia's entire previous apartment. This is yours, he said. Private bathroom, walk-in closet, and a view of the park. Moreover, I'm at the opposite end of the hall. It's perfect, Sophia said honestly. The housekeeper comes twice a week. Furthermore, there's a car service available whenever you need it. Just call the front desk. Sophia nodded, feeling overwhelmed. Everything was so different from her previous life. Moreover, she wondered if she'd made a huge mistake. Damien? She said as he turned to leave. Yes? What do we do now? I mean, how do we act around each other? Damien paused in the doorway. We coexist. Furthermore, we maintain appropriate boundaries while appearing happily married in public. And in private? In private, we're strangers who happen to share living space. His voice was distant but not unkind. Moreover, that's safest for both of us. After he left, Sophia sat on the enormous bed and stared out at the city lights. She was Sophia Cross now. Furthermore, she was married to a man who'd just called them strangers. Music builds with uncertainty and longing. But as she watched his reflection disappear down the hall, Sophia wondered if staying strangers would be as easy as he claimed. Chapter 2. Awkward Beginnings. Sophia woke to the smell of fresh coffee and something that might have been pancakes. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Furthermore, the silk sheets and morning sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows felt like a dream. Then reality crashed back. She was Mrs. Damien Cross now. Moreover, today was their first full day as a married couple. She padded to the kitchen in her pajamas and robe, following the delicious scents. What she found made her stop in the doorway. Damien stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with surprising skill. He'd traded his usual suit for jeans and a casual sweater. Additionally, his dark hair was messy from sleep, making him look younger and more approachable. Good morning, he said without turning around. You cook? Sophia asked, surprised. I cook breakfast. Everything else comes from restaurants or the housekeeper. Damien glanced over his shoulder. Furthermore, I assumed you'd be hungry. Sophia noticed he'd set 2 places at the kitchen island. Moreover, fresh orange juice and coffee waited beside perfectly folded napkins. This is Unexpected, she admitted. Did you think I'd leave you to fend for yourself? Damien placed a stack of golden pancakes in front of her. I thought we were supposed to be strangers coexisting. Damien's hand paused over the syrup bottle. Strangers can still be civil. Furthermore, you're living in my home now. Sophia took a bite and nearly moaned with pleasure. These are amazing. My grandmother's recipe she taught me when I was 12. Damien's expression softened slightly. Furthermore, she said a man should know how to take care of people he cares about. She sounds wonderful. She was the only person who ever really understood me. Damien's jaw tightened. Moreover, she's the reason I need this inheritance. The company was her legacy. Sophia sensed pain beneath his controlled exterior. However, before she could ask more questions, Damien's phone buzzed urgently. Crisis in Tokyo, he said, scanning the message. I need to handle this immediately. Of course. Work comes first. Damien looked at her sharply. It has to, Sophia. Furthermore, this company supports thousands of employees. Their livelihoods depend on my decisions. I understand, Sophia said quietly. After Damien disappeared into his home office, Sophia explored the penthouse. Every room was perfectly decorated but strangely impersonal. Moreover, she found no family photos, personal mementos, or anything that revealed the man behind the fortune. The art collection was impressive but cold. Furthermore, everything felt like a display rather than a home. In the afternoon, Sophia set up an easel by the living room windows. The natural light was perfect for painting. Moreover, she lost herself in mixing colors for the first time in weeks. What are you working on? Sophia jumped. Damien stood behind her, studying her canvas with genuine interest. Furthermore, he'd changed back into a suit, looking every inch the powerful CEO. Just a landscape. The view from your windows is incredible. Sophia felt self-conscious about her simple painting setup among his expensive furniture. You have talent, Damien said simply. Thank you. There's a room upstairs that gets better light. Additionally, it's larger if you need more space for your work. Sophia looked at him with surprise. You'd let me use another room? This is your home now too, Sophia. Furthermore, you should have space for what matters to you. Something warm unfurled in Sophia's chest. That's very kind. Damien shrugged, but she caught a hint of color in his cheeks. Practical. Additionally, happy wives are more convincing than miserable ones. That evening, they sat in the living room reading. Sophia curled up with a novel while Damien reviewed financial reports. Moreover, the silence was comfortable rather than awkward. Damien, Sophia said during a commercial break from the background music. What do I need to know about being your wife in public? Damien set down his papers. Smile. Look happy to be with me. Furthermore, let me do most of the talking during business conversations. That's it? You're naturally gracious. Additionally, you won't embarrass me if that's what you're worried about. I wasn't worried about embarrassing you, Sophia said with a slight edge. I was worried about embarrassing myself. Damien studied her face. You could never embarrass yourself, Sophia. Furthermore, you have more natural class than most of the society women I know. The compliment caught her off guard. Thank you. I should warn you about tomorrow night. We're attending a gallery opening. Furthermore, it's our first public appearance as a married couple. Sophia's stomach clenched. Will there be photographers? Many. The art world loves documenting billionaire wives. Moreover, they'll be analyzing everything about you. No pressure, Sophia muttered. Sophia. Damien's voice was gentler. Just be yourself. Furthermore, that's all I need from you. As they said goodnight at their respective bedroom doors, Sophia felt a strange flutter of anticipation. Moreover, she was beginning to realize that her cold, distant husband might be more complicated than she'd thought. Furthermore, she was beginning to wonder if keeping their distance would be as simple as the contract specified. Chapter 3. Cracks in the Armor. The gallery opening was everything Sophia had feared. Photographers flashed constantly, society women scrutinized her dress, and everyone wanted to meet Damien's mysterious new wife. Moreover, she felt like an imposter in her borrowed designer gown. "Mrs. Cross, tell us about your courtship." A reporter thrust a microphone in her face. "It was very romantic," Sophia said, forcing a smile. She felt Damien's hand settle protectively on her lower back. "We prefer to keep our private life private," Damien said smoothly, steering her away from the cameras. They moved through the gallery like a perfect couple. Damien's hand stayed possessively on her waist. Furthermore, he introduced her with pride that felt surprisingly genuine. "This piece reminds me of your work," Damien murmured near her ear as they studied a watercolor landscape. "You've been paying attention to my paintings?" "I notice everything about you, Sophia." His breath against her ear sent unexpected shivers down her spine. For a moment, the crowd faded away. Moreover, Sophia found herself drowning in Damien's blue eyes. "Damien, there you are!" A shrill voice shattered the moment. A blonde woman in a too-tight dress appeared, air-kissing Damien's cheeks. Furthermore, she completely ignored Sophia's existence. "Victoria," Damien said coolly. Victoria Ashworth, the woman Damien's mother had wanted him to marry. Moreover, she was stunning in a predatory sort of way. "Mother told me about your little wedding," Victoria purred. "How sudden it was." "When you know," Damien replied, pulling Sophia closer. Victoria's calculating eyes assessed Sophia from head to toe. "She's quite different from your usual type." "Yes," Damien said firmly. "She's genuine." The insult was subtle but clear. Victoria's smile turned sharp. Furthermore, Sophia felt like prey being circled by a predator. "Well, enjoy your honeymoon phase," Victoria said sweetly. "These things rarely last long in our world." After she glided away, Sophia felt shaken. "Your usual type?" "Models, socialites, women who wanted to be seen with me more than they wanted to know me." Damien's voice was matter-of-fact. "Furthermore, Victoria is everything my mother thinks I should want." "But not what you want." Damien looked at her with an unreadable expression. "No, not what I want." The intensity in his voice made Sophia's heart race. Moreover, she wondered what he did want. The evening ended late. In the car ride home, Sophia felt exhausted from maintaining her perfect wife act. Additionally, the champagne had left her slightly dizzy. "You were perfect tonight," Damien said quietly. "I felt like a fraud." Everyone feels like a fraud in that world. Furthermore, the difference is you actually have substance beneath the surface. Back at the penthouse, they said goodnight at their bedroom doors. However, Sophia felt strange energy crackling between them. Moreover, the way Damien looked at her had changed throughout the evening. "Good night, Sophia." "Good night, Damien." But sleep didn't come easily. Sophia tossed and turned, replaying every moment of their public debut. Furthermore, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Damien had touched her, held her, looked at her. Finally, exhaustion won. Sophia drifted into uneasy sleep, then the nightmare came. She was back in the basement. Cold concrete pressed against her cheek. Moreover, she could hear footsteps coming closer. Closer. "Please," she whimpered in her sleep. "Please, don't." Hands reached for her in the darkness. Furthermore, she was small and helpless and completely alone. "No!" Sophia screamed, jolting awake. She sat up, gasping, her nightgown soaked with sweat. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure the entire building could hear it. Moreover, she was shaking uncontrollably. A soft knock at her door made her freeze. "Sophia?" Damien's voice was concerned but cautious. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she called out, her voice cracking. "You don't sound fine." Sophia wrapped her arms around herself. The nightmare clung to her like smoke. Furthermore, she could still feel those phantom hands reaching for her. "Can I come in?" Damien asked. No, thank you. I'm okay." but she wasn't okay. Moreover, she was terrified and alone and falling apart. Silence stretched between them. Then Sophia heard something that surprised her. Damien sliding down to sit against her door. "I'm staying right here," he said quietly. "Furthermore, you don't have to talk, but you're not alone." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Damien." "I'm here, Sophia. Moreover, whatever is haunting you can't touch you while I'm here." His voice through the door was gentle and strong. Furthermore, knowing he was there made the darkness feel less overwhelming. "The contract says no sleeping together," Sophia whispered. "The contract doesn't cover nightmares," Damien replied. "Furthermore, some things are more important than contracts." Sophia realized that her walls were beginning to crack. Moreover, Damien Cross was proving to be far different from the cold businessman she'd married. Chapter 4. Breaking Rules. 3 weeks into their marriage, Sophia thought she had the nightmares under control. She'd been sleeping better, painting more, and almost forgetting their relationship was fake. Moreover, Damien had been surprisingly gentle and attentive. Until the night everything changed. Sophia woke screaming at 2 a.m. The nightmare had been worse than usual, more vivid, more terrifying. Furthermore, she couldn't stop shaking even after fully awakening. This time she didn't wait for Damien to knock. The terror was too overwhelming. Moreover, she stumbled to her door and yanked it open. Damien stood in the hallway wearing only pajama pants, his hair messy from sleep. However, his eyes were instantly alert and concerned. "Sophia." He stepped toward her without hesitation. I can't stop shaking," she gasped. The nightmare was so real. Damien's face tightened with something fierce and protective. "Come here." Before Sophia could protest, he gathered her into his arms. She melted against his chest, finally feeling safe. Moreover, his warm strength surrounded her like armor against the darkness. "You're safe," he murmured against her hair. "Furthermore, I've got you." Sophia should have pulled away. The contract explicitly forbade this kind of intimacy. However, she couldn't bear to leave his arms. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know this breaks our agreement." "Forget the agreement." Damien's voice was rough with emotion. "Furthermore, you're more important than any contract." He guided her back to her bed and sat beside her, keeping one arm around her shoulders. Additionally, his thumb traced soothing circles on her arm. "Tell me about the nightmare," he said softly. Sophia tensed. "I can't." "You can tell me anything, Sophia. Moreover, nothing you say will change how I see you." Something in his voice broke through her defenses. "I was 12. My foster father." She started, then stopped. Damien went completely still. "He hurt you." It wasn't a question. Furthermore, the deadly calm in his voice was more frightening than any explosion of anger. "It was a long time ago," Sophia said quickly. "That doesn't matter. Furthermore, trauma doesn't follow timelines." Damien turned to face her fully. "How long did it continue?" 2 years, until I was old enough to run away." Sophia couldn't meet his eyes. Moreover, no one believed me when I tried to tell. Damien's jaw worked silently. When Sophia finally looked at him, she saw rage burning in his blue eyes. However, his touch remained infinitely gentle. "I believe you," he said fiercely. "Furthermore, I'm going to make sure you never feel unsafe again." "Damien, you don't understand. The nightmares, they come and go. Moreover, sometimes I wake up screaming for hours. Then I'll hold you for hours." His answer was immediate and certain. Sophia stared at him in shock. "But the contract..." "The contract is just paper, Sophia. Furthermore, this..." He gestured between them. "This is real." As if to prove his point, Damien shifted to lie down beside her, pulling her against his chest. Moreover, he kept one protective arm around her while stroking her hair with his free hand. "Sleep," he commanded softly. "Furthermore, I'll watch over you. What if I have another nightmare? Then I'll wake you up and remind you that you're safe. Damien's voice was absolutely steady. Moreover, I'll stay with you until the fear passes. Sophia had never felt so protected in her life. Furthermore, she realized that somewhere between their fake marriage and this moment, her feelings had become terrifyingly real. Damien, she whispered. Yes? Why are you doing this? Why risk complicating our arrangement? Damien was quiet for so long that Sophia thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he spoke, his voice barely audible. Because when you're hurting, I hurt. Furthermore, I can't stand the thought of you suffering alone. Sophia's heart stopped. What does that mean? It means our contract was doomed from the start. Damien's arm tightened around her. Moreover, it means I'm falling in love with my wife. Sophia's breath caught. Damien. Sleep, Sophia. We'll figure out what this means tomorrow. Furthermore, right now, all that matters is that you feel safe. Sophia closed her eyes and let herself sink into his warmth. For the first time in years, she felt completely protected. Moreover, she felt loved. As she drifted off to sleep, Sophia realized that their contract marriage had become something neither of them had planned for. It had become real love. Furthermore, there was no going back from that. Chapter 5. Playing House. Sophia woke wrapped in Damien's arms as sunlight streamed through her bedroom windows. For a moment, she let herself pretend this was real, that she was loved by this incredible man. Moreover, she savored the feeling of safety his presence provided. Good morning. Damien's voice was rough with sleep. Good morning. Sophia felt shy suddenly. Thank you for last night. You don't need to thank me. Damien's thumb traced her cheek gently. Furthermore, how did you sleep after? Better than I have in years, Sophia admitted. They lay in comfortable silence, both aware they were crossing lines their contract had clearly drawn. However, neither seemed willing to move away. I should make breakfast, Damien said finally. I could cook for once, Sophia offered. Furthermore, it's only fair since you've been taking care of me. In the kitchen, they moved around each other with surprising harmony. Sophia scrambled eggs while Damien handled coffee and toast. Moreover, their casual touches, a hand on a shoulder, fingers brushing while passing plates, felt natural and right. We have the Morrison charity luncheon today, Damien mentioned over breakfast. Another performance as the happy couple? Damien's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Is that what this feels like to you? A performance? Sophia met his gaze directly. Honestly, not anymore. Something intense passed between them. Furthermore, Sophia realized they were both acknowledging how much had changed. Sophia, Damien started, but his phone buzzed insistently. Answer it, she said softly. It might be important. The call was from his assistant about a last-minute crisis with their biggest client. Furthermore, Damien's expression grew serious as he listened. I have to go to the office, he said after hanging up. The luncheon starts at noon. Moreover, I'll meet you there. Of course. Sophia tried to hide her disappointment. Damien paused at the door, then returned to cup her face in his hands. Sophia, about what I said last night. We don't have to talk about it now, she said quickly. Yes, we do. His blue eyes were intense. Furthermore, I meant every word. Before Sophia could respond, Damien kissed her forehead tenderly and left. Moreover, she stood in the kitchen, touching the spot where his lips had been. At the charity luncheon, Sophia arrived alone and immediately felt out of place. Society women whispered behind their champagne glasses. Furthermore, she recognized several faces from gossip magazines. Mrs. Cross, a photographer, appeared at her elbow. Where's your husband? Business emergency, Sophia said with a practiced smile. Furthermore, he'll be here soon. But an hour passed with no sign of Damien. Sophia fielded questions about their marriage, their future plans, and Damien's whereabouts. Moreover, She began to feel like she was drowning. "Poor dear," she heard one woman whisper, already being left alone at events. Furthermore, Damien's always been married to his work. "I give it 6 months," another replied. Moreover, she's not sophisticated enough to hold his interest. Sophia's cheeks burned, but she kept smiling. However, inside, doubts began creeping in. Maybe this was all foolish. Furthermore, maybe Damien's confession had been just emotion from the moment. Then strong arms wrapped around her from behind. "Sorry I'm late, darling," Damien murmured against her ear. Sophia melted back against him. "It's okay." "No, it's not." Damien turned her to face him. "Furthermore, I should never leave you to handle these vultures alone." He kissed her then, right there in front of everyone. It wasn't for show. It was possessive, tender, and completely real. Moreover, Sophia felt her knees go weak. "Let's go home," Damien said against her lips. "But the luncheon can continue without us. Furthermore, I have more important things to attend to." In the car, Damien held her hand while telling her about his crisis client. Moreover, he seemed genuinely interested when she described the society women's catty comments. "They're jealous," he said simply. "Of what?" "Of you. Furthermore, of what we have together." Sophia's heart skipped. "What do we have together, Damien?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Something I never expected to find. Moreover, something I'm not sure I deserve." Back at the penthouse, they settled into domestic routines that felt surprisingly natural. Sophia painted while Damien worked on his laptop nearby. Furthermore, they shared dinner and comfortable conversation. "Tell me about your family," Sophia said over dessert. Damien's expression darkened. "There's not much to tell. Furthermore, my parents see relationships as business transactions." "Is that why you created our contract?" "Partially. I thought I could control the situation. Moreover, I thought I could keep my heart out of it completely." "And now?" Damien reached across the table to take her hand. "Now I realize I was an idiot. Furthermore, my heart has been involved since the moment I saw you crying in that cafe." Sophia's breath caught. "Damien, I know this complicates everything. Moreover, I know we agreed to keep things simple. But Sophia, I can't pretend anymore." "Pretend what?" "That this is just business. Furthermore, that I don't love you completely." The words hung between them like a bridge they could either cross or burn. Moreover, Sophia realized her answer would change everything. "I love you too," she whispered. Damien's face transformed with relief and joy. "Even though I am emotionally unavailable? Furthermore, even though I put work before everything else? Even though you're complicated and stubborn and think contracts can control feelings?" Sophia smiled through happy tears. "Moreover, I love you because underneath all that armor, you have the gentlest heart I've ever known." Damien stood and pulled her into his arms. "What does this mean for our arrangement?" "I think our arrangement just became a real marriage." Sophia looked up at him with wonder. "Furthermore, I think that terrifies us both." "Terrified," Damien agreed, "but also hopeful. Moreover, I've never been hopeful about love before." As they held each other in the kitchen, where this had all begun, Sophia felt something shift permanently. Moreover, she realized that sometimes the best contracts were the ones that broke completely. Because what they had now was so much better than anything they'd ever written down. Chapter 6. The Truth About Her Past. 2 weeks of blissful married life made Sophia believe she could outrun her past. She and Damien had fallen into a rhythm of genuine intimacy, talking for hours, sharing meals, and yes, sleeping in the same bed when her nightmares came. Moreover, she'd begun to hope that love really could heal everything. Then David Chen appeared at their door. Sophia was painting in her studio when the doorman called up. Furthermore, her blood turned to ice when she heard the name she'd been running from for years. "Tell him I'm not here," she whispered into the phone. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cross, but he says he's your brother. Moreover, he seems quite insistent about seeing you. Sophia's hands shook as she set down her brushes. David wasn't actually her brother. He was the son of her foster family. Furthermore, he was the reason she'd never been able to fully escape her past. Sophia. Damien appeared in the doorway. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I might have, she said faintly. Before she could explain, the elevator chimed. Moreover, David Chen walked into their penthouse like he owned it. He looked exactly the same, handsome in a predatory way, with calculating eyes and an expensive suit. Furthermore, his smile was the same one that had terrified her as a child. Hello, little sister, David said smoothly. Damien stepped protectively in front of Sophia. Who are you? And how did you get up here? David Chen, Sophia's family. David's eyes glittered with malice. Moreover, I'm here to discuss some family business. He's not my family, Sophia said quietly. Furthermore, I want him to leave. Now, Sophia, that's no way to treat your dear brother, especially when I've come all this way to congratulate you on your marriage. David's voice dripped false sweetness. Damien's entire body had gone rigid. Sophia, how do you know this man? He lived in the same foster home, Sophia whispered. Moreover, he knew what was happening to me. Knew? David laughed coldly. I facilitated it. Furthermore, little Sophia was quite the commodity in our household. Damien moved so fast that Sophia barely saw it. One moment David was standing smugly by the elevator, the next he was pressed against the wall with Damien's hand around his throat. What did you just say? Damien's voice was deadly quiet. Easy, billionaire boy, David gasped. Furthermore, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here for business. Let him go, Damien, Sophia said shakily. Moreover, let him say what he came to say. Damien released David but didn't step back. His protective stance made Sophia's heart ache with gratitude. Much better. David straightened his tie. As I was saying, I'm here about business. Furthermore, it seems my little sister has married quite well for herself. Get to the point, Damien growled. The point is, I have some very interesting photos from Sophia's childhood. Moreover, I think certain media outlets would pay handsomely for the tragic backstory of America's newest billionaire wife. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. You're blackmailing me? I prefer to think of it as a family reunion with financial benefits. David's smile was cruel. Furthermore, I'm sure your new husband wouldn't want the world to know about his wife's sordid past. Damien stepped forward again, but Sophia caught his arm. How much? She asked quietly. Sophia, no, Damien said sharply. $1 million, David said casually. Furthermore, this is a one-time payment for my permanent silence. Done, Damien said immediately. David's eyebrows rose. Just like that? Just like that. Furthermore, you'll sign a legal agreement never to contact my wife again. Damien, you don't understand. Sophia started. I understand perfectly. Damien's voice was ice cold. Moreover, I understand that this piece of garbage has been terrorizing you for years. David laughed. Terrorizing? I gave her purpose. Furthermore, without me, she never would have learned how to please men. This time, Sophia couldn't stop Damien fast enough. His fist connected with David's jaw with a sickening crack. Moreover, David crumpled to the floor, blood streaming from his nose. Damien, Sophia gasped. Get out, Damien said quietly. Furthermore, if I ever see you near my wife again, I'll destroy you completely. David scrambled to his feet, holding his bloody nose. You'll regret this, Sophia. Moreover, when he gets tired of his broken toy, you'll come crawling back. After David left, Sophia collapsed onto the couch. Her entire body was shaking. Moreover, she couldn't meet Damien's eyes. Sophia, Damien said gently, sitting beside her. Now you know, she whispered. Furthermore, now you know what you married. What I married is a survivor. Moreover, what I married is the strongest woman I've ever known. Sophia finally looked at him. Aren't you disgusted? Disgusted? Damien's voice was fierce. I'm disgusted with the monsters who hurt you. Furthermore, I'm disgusted with a system that failed to protect you. But disgusted with you? Never. David wasn't lying. I was used. Moreover, I'm damaged goods, Damien. Damien pulled her into his arms. You're not damaged. Furthermore, you're not goods to be evaluated. You're my wife, and I love every part of you. Even the broken parts? Especially the broken parts. Moreover, they make you who you are, compassionate, strong, and absolutely perfect. Sophia buried her face against his chest and cried. Furthermore, she cried for the child she'd been, for the years of shame, and for the relief of finally being completely known and loved. I should have told you before, she sobbed. You told me when you were ready. Furthermore, that's all that matters. The media will find out eventually. Moreover, this will hurt your reputation. Damien pulled back to look at her. Sophia, I don't care about my reputation. Furthermore, I care about you. Let them print whatever they want. We'll face it together. As Damien held her while she grieved, Sophia realized that true love really could heal. Moreover, she realized that Damien Cross loved her, not despite her past, but because it had made her who she was. Chapter 7. Choose love or duty. The next morning brought devastating news. Damien's phone rang at 6 a.m. with his lawyer's panicked voice. The board called an emergency meeting, the lawyer explained. Furthermore, someone leaked photos of the incident with David Chen. They're questioning your stability. Sophia watched Damien's face harden as he listened. Moreover, she felt dread settling in her stomach like lead. What kind of photos? Damien asked coldly. Security footage of you punching Chen in your own penthouse. Additionally, he's claiming assault and demanding compensation. Damien closed his eyes. How bad is this? Bad. The board is threatening to invoke the morality clause in your grandfather's will. Furthermore, they're saying a CEO who resorts to violence isn't fit to inherit. After Damien hung up, he sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. Moreover, Sophia could practically see the weight of responsibility crushing him. This is my fault, she said quietly. No. This is David Chen's fault. Furthermore, it's my fault for losing control. Damien, your grandfather's company, will survive without me. But his voice lacked conviction. An hour later, they sat in the lawyer's office surrounded by grim faces. Furthermore, the board members looked at Sophia like she was a contagious disease. The footage is quite damning, Board Chairman Harrison said coldly. Moreover, Chen is threatening to go public unless we meet his demands. What demands? Damien asked. $2 million and your resignation as CEO. Harrison's smile was predatory. Furthermore, he wants Sophia to publicly apologize for her husband's behavior. Absolutely not, Damien said immediately. Then you'll lose everything. Moreover, the company will pass to your cousin Marcus. Sophia knew Marcus Cross, a spoiled playboy who'd run the company into the ground within a year. Furthermore, thousands of employees would lose their jobs. There is one alternative, Harrison continued smoothly. Furthermore, it would solve all our problems. Which is? Annul the marriage. Distance yourself from Mrs. Cross completely. Moreover, we'll make Chen's problem disappear quietly. Sophia felt like she'd been slapped. Annul our marriage? Think about it practically. Harrison pressed. The marriage has only been a few months. Furthermore, you could claim it was a mistake made in haste. Get out, Damien said quietly. Damien, be reasonable. Get out, Damien roared. Furthermore, don't ever suggest I abandon my wife again. After the board members left, Sophia and Damien sat in stunned silence. Moreover, the weight of their impossible situation pressed down on them. "You have to do it," Sophia said finally. "No. Damien, listen to me. This company was your grandmother's legacy. Furthermore, you can't let it be destroyed because of my past. I won't choose between you and the company. You're not choosing. I'm choosing for you." Sophia stood up, her heart breaking with each word. "Moreover, I'm setting you free from our contract." Damien shot to his feet. "Sophia, no." "Yes. Furthermore, this is the right thing to do. The right thing is standing by the woman I love. The right thing is protecting thousands of jobs. Moreover, the right thing is honoring your grandmother's memory." Sophia walked to the window, unable to look at Damien's face. Furthermore, she knew that if she saw his pain, she'd lose her resolve. "I survived before I met you," she said quietly. "Furthermore, I'll survive after you're gone. I don't want you to just survive. I want you to live. Moreover, I want you to live with me." "Some love stories don't have happy endings, Damien." Damien came up behind her, his reflection visible in the window. "Ours will. Furthermore, I'll find another way." "There is no other way. Moreover, you know it as well as I do." That afternoon, Sophia packed her belongings while Damien was in emergency board meetings. Furthermore, she left her wedding ring on his nightstand with a simple note. "Thank you for showing me what real love feels like. Furthermore, thank you for making me believe I was worthy of it. I'll love you forever. S." Maya picked her up with tears in her eyes. "You don't have to do this, honey." "Yes, I do. Furthermore, it's the only way he can have the life he deserves." "What about the life you deserve?" Sophia looked back at the penthouse one last time. "I got 6 months of magic. Moreover, that's more than I ever expected." That evening, Damien came home to an empty apartment. Furthermore, his howl of anguish echoed through rooms that suddenly felt like a mausoleum. He called her phone obsessively, but she'd changed her number. Moreover, he hired investigators, but Sophia had disappeared completely. The board meeting the next day was brutal. Furthermore, without Sophia to blame for his instability, they focused on his inability to control his personal life. "The inheritance requires a stable marriage," Harrison reminded him coldly. "Furthermore, your wife's abandonment suggests otherwise." Damien stared at the contract in front of him, papers that would dissolve his marriage and secure his inheritance. Moreover, all he had to do was sign his name. "I need time to think," he said. "You have 24 hours. Furthermore, after that, the decision will be made for you." Alone in his office, Damien stared out at the city. Somewhere out there, Sophia was starting over again. Moreover, she was doing it to protect him and his company. He had 24 hours to choose between the woman he loved and everything he'd worked for. Furthermore, he had no idea how to choose between his heart and his duty. Chapter 8. The Real Proposal. Damien didn't sleep for 3 days. He spent every moment searching for Sophia while wrestling with the impossible choice before him. Moreover, the board's deadline loomed like a guillotine over his future. Then Marcus Cross appeared in his office with a smug smile. "Cousin," Marcus said, settling into a chair uninvited. "Furthermore, I hear congratulations are in order. You're about to make me very wealthy." "What are you talking about? When you lose the inheritance, it comes to me. Moreover, I've already got buyers lined up for most of the company assets." Damien's blood ran cold. "You're planning to sell?" "Piece by piece. Furthermore, the real estate alone is worth billions. I'll keep maybe 10% of the workforce. Marcus, this company employs 15,000 people. Moreover, you're talking about destroying 15,000 lives." Marcus shrugged. "Business is business, cousin. Furthermore, if you'd chosen better wife material, this wouldn't be a problem." Something crystallized in Damien's mind. "You orchestrated this." "What?" "David Chen. You paid him to show up. Moreover, you probably fed information to the board about Sophia's past. Marcus's guilty expression confirmed everything. You were always too soft, Damien. Furthermore, grandfather should have left everything to me in the first place. Get out, Damien said quietly. 24 hours, cousin. Furthermore, I'll try not to fire too many employees on my first day. After Marcus left, Damien called his head of security. I want David Chen found within the hour. Moreover, I want proof of his connection to Marcus. Yes, sir. Furthermore, sir? We found Mrs. Cross. Damien's heart stopped. Where? The women's shelter downtown. Moreover, she's been volunteering there since she left. Damien was out the door before his security chief finished talking. He found Sophia in the shelter's kitchen, serving dinner to homeless families. Furthermore, she looked thinner, sadder, but still beautiful enough to stop his heart. Sophia. She turned at the sound of his voice. Her face went white. Moreover, she nearly dropped the serving spoon. What are you doing here? Coming for my wife. Damien stepped closer. Furthermore, I'm not leaving without you. Damien, we talked about this. Moreover, I can't be the reason you lose everything. You're not the reason. Marcus is. Damien explained about his cousin's scheme. Furthermore, he's been planning this for months. Sophia's eyes widened. He paid David to find me? David confessed everything an hour ago. Moreover, Marcus promised him $5 million if he could destroy our marriage. But the board will have to accept that their information came from a conspiracy. Furthermore, when the truth comes out, they'll have no choice but to back down. Sophia shook her head. It doesn't matter. My past is still real. Moreover, the media will still destroy your reputation. Damien took her hands in his. I don't care about my reputation. Furthermore, I don't care about the board or the inheritance or any of it. But your grandmother's legacy? My grandmother would want me to choose love. Moreover, she'd want me to choose the woman who makes me a better man. Damien. Sophia's voice was breaking. I quit today, Damien said simply. Sophia's mouth fell open. What? I resigned as CEO. Furthermore, I turned down the inheritance completely. You can't do that. I already did. Moreover, I'm starting my own company. We'll build something new together. But Marcus will destroy everything, not if we stop him first. Furthermore, I have a plan, but I need my wife beside me to make it work. Damien dropped to one knee right there in the shelter kitchen. Furthermore, he pulled out the ring Sophia had left behind. Sophia Chen Cross, will you marry me? Again? For real this time? We're already married, Sophia said through her tears. Legally, yes, but I want to marry you in every way that matters. Moreover, I want to promise you forever, not just 6 months. The contract? There is no contract anymore. Furthermore, there's just a man who loves a woman more than life itself. Sophia looked around the kitchen. Homeless families had stopped eating to watch their impromptu proposal. Moreover, everyone was smiling through their own tears. What about the company? We'll save it together. Furthermore, we'll build something even better. Something based on love instead of obligation. What if we fail? Then we'll fail together. Moreover, I'd rather fail with you than succeed without you. Sophia stared into his blue eyes and saw her entire future reflected there. Furthermore, she saw a man who'd given up everything to choose love. Yes, she whispered. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you again. Moreover, yes, I'll build a life with you. Yes, to everything. Damien slipped the ring back onto her finger and stood to kiss her. Furthermore, the entire shelter erupted in cheers and applause. I love you, Sophia Cross. I love you too. Moreover, I love that you chose us over everything else. Easiest choice I ever made. Furthermore, you're worth more than any inheritance. As they held each other in the shelter kitchen, Sophia realized that some fairy tales do come true. Moreover, Sometimes the prince really does give up his kingdom for love, because what they had now was worth more than any contract ever could be. Chapter 9. Forever Contract. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the same coffee shop where their story began. However, this time she wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. Moreover, this time she wasn't desperate, she was radiant with happiness. "Ready?" Maya asked, adjusting Sophia's veil. "More than ready," Sophia smiled. "Furthermore, I've been ready since the moment he chose me over everything else." They decided to have their real wedding where they'd first met. The coffee shop owner had closed early for their ceremony. Moreover, fairy lights and flowers transformed the simple space into something magical. Damien waited at the front of the small gathering, looking devastatingly handsome in his navy suit. Furthermore, his eyes never left Sophia's face as she walked toward him. "Hi," she said when she reached him. "Hi yourself, Mrs. Cross." Damien's smile could have powered the city. "Furthermore, you look absolutely perfect." Their guests were small but meaningful. Maya stood as maid of honor. Additionally, several families from the shelter had come to witness their happiness. Notably absent were Damien's parents, who'd disowned him after he'd chosen love over duty. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, "we're gathered here today to witness something remarkable. Furthermore, we're here to see two people choose love over everything else." Damien and Sophia had written their own vows. Moreover, there wasn't a dry eye in the coffee shop as they spoke. "Sophia," Damien said, his voice thick with emotion, "you saved me from a life without meaning. Furthermore, you taught me that love is the only thing that truly matters. I promise to protect your heart the way you've healed mine. Moreover, I promise to choose you every single day for the rest of our lives." "Damien," Sophia replied, tears streaming down her face, "you saw me when I was invisible. Furthermore, you loved me when I couldn't love myself. I promise to stand beside you through every challenge. Moreover, I promise that our love will always be stronger than any contract." They exchanged new rings, simple gold bands engraved with "Forever Contract" inside. Furthermore, when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss tasted like promises and hope. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Cross." Again. The small crowd erupted in cheers. Moreover, as rice and flower petals fell around them, Sophia felt like the luckiest woman alive. Later, at their reception in Damien's penthouse, they shared their first dance as a truly married couple. Furthermore, the same song played that had accompanied their very first contract signing. "Any regrets?" Sophia asked as they swayed together. "Only one," Damien said seriously. Sophia's heart clenched. "What?" "I regret not falling in love with you sooner. Furthermore, I regret every day we wasted pretending this was just business." Sophia laughed with relief. "For a second you scared me." "Never. Furthermore, you're stuck with me forever now." "What about the company? Any word from the board?" Damien's smile turned predatory. "Marcus lasted exactly 3 weeks before running the company into the ground. Moreover, the board is begging me to come back. And I told them I'm too busy building something better with my wife." Damien spun her around. "Furthermore, our new company is already more successful than anything I built alone." CrossChan Enterprises had indeed exceeded all expectations. Additionally, their focus on ethical business practices and employee welfare had attracted top talent from around the world. "Plus," Damien continued, "I have some very exciting news." "What news?" "The art gallery downtown wants to feature your paintings. Furthermore, they're calling you the most promising new artist in the city." Sophia gasped. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Moreover, my wife is going to be famous." "Your wife is going to faint," Sophia said, overwhelmed with joy. As the evening wound down, Sophia found herself on the balcony overlooking the city. Furthermore, she thought about how much her life had changed since that desperate day in the coffee shop. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Damien joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Just thinking about contracts," Sophia said, leaning back against his chest. "Still thinking about our first contract?" "Actually, I'm thinking about our new one." Sophia turned in his arms. "Furthermore, I think it's the best deal I ever made." "What are the terms of this new contract?" "Love, honor, cherish, and hold each other through nightmares." Sophia smiled up at him. "Moreover, no expiration date this time." "I accept those terms completely. Furthermore, I'll never try to negotiate out of them." Damien kissed her then, soft and sweet under the starlight. Moreover, Sophia realized that some contracts really were unbreakable. "I love you, Damien Cross." "I love you too, Sophia Cross. Furthermore, I'll love you until my last breath and beyond." As they held each other on the balcony where their fake marriage had slowly become real, Sophia knew they'd found something precious. Moreover, they'd found a love worth giving up everything for. Epilogue. 1 year later, Sophia's art gallery opening is packed with admirers. Damien stands beside her, proudly watching his wife's dreams come true. Moreover, when she whispers that she has some contract amendments to discuss later, his confused expression makes her laugh. The amendment? A baby clause. Because their forever contract is about to expand to include a family,